Hello everybody. It was so nice to see the response that I got from my last video about Santa Monica, and some more details have been released, so I was looking more into it today, and I have some more things that I'd like to point out and see if anyone else has some input. So I have a lot to go over, so I'll try to do this quick. First of all, the man's name is John, I want to say Zawahiri. It is of Middle Eastern descent. The story is that he killed his brother Chris and his father Samir in the house and then burned it down. And then the mother, Rhonda Abdu, was actually in Lebanon visiting home. I guess that she's Lebanese, and she was working 2 waitressing jobs to support them. So far, I don't know much about the family. I went on Ancestry.com, and usually you can find maybe a couple articles, but I only found birth certificates and marriage record between the 2 of them. One thing that I had guessed was that neighbors and friends and co-workers and students that went to school with him are already talking about how he was kind of, well, as they say, a little bit crazy. This article in particular, Santa Monica gunman had fascination with guns, friend said. First of all, this friend doesn't want to be identified, which I'm not really sure why, considering that he's already dead and there would be no dangerous repercussions from something like that. But what he's saying, or she is saying, is that he had a fascination with guns. We were all worried about it. But that doesn't make sense, because if so many of you were worried about it, why didn't anybody speak up and say something to somebody? This article is interesting because this is also the one that talks about his mom working the 2 jobs, and it tells a little bit about her. So if anyone can find out, because now we know that the mother was a waitress at 2 separate places. One of the places is named in this article, and Rose Cafe in Venice. And then we're not sure about John, Chris, or Samir. So if anyone can come up with any information, I did some digging and it's really difficult to find them. I'm not sure why. I think that part of it is that it's actually a common Arabic name. I'm realizing as I'm doing some searches, all of the names are kind of common Arabic names, or Middle Eastern. I believe that the mother was Lebanese. But what I find interesting about the fact that this boy was Middle Eastern is that the Boston bombers were also Middle Eastern, and I'm sure you can all make the tie back then to 9/11. And when I was doing searches, when I was doing Zawahiri, and Samir, even Rhonda Abdu, I would find that, Abdu, Zawahiri, these names were continually popping up with Al-Qaeda links to them. Now, this could still be a coincidence. It could just be that I don't know those Middle Eastern names very well, and that those could be common names. But, in reality, could this be another excuse for a war? Are we looking for a reason to attack one of these Middle Eastern countries again? Because we have seen in the past that Americans will turn against anyone that they are made to fear so strongly. Another very interesting thing about this whole situation in the Middle Eastern tie is that in my video list, it's called For Those Seeking Truth or something like that. I just made it, but I can't remember what I named it. But I actually have a ton of videos in there that one searching into these things might find interesting. And one of them is called Death to America, LAPD Terror Drill. And if you watched my last video, you know that on Thursday, the 6th, LAPD did a huge mock terror drill in the middle of Los Angeles. This drill had 1,800 officials from around the world that came and practiced with them. And part of this drill, in the video I'm suggesting you see one of the fake victims either get shot or blow off a suicide bomb. But after that happens, she falls, and from the corner you can hear someone scream, "Death to America!" And it's almost like they were setting up this whole terrorism fear thing of, oh, look at people that don't like America must be our enemies. We'll see where that goes. That could just be a coincidence, or it could be, like I said, a setup for another reason to go to war. So now I want to move on to the victim, or the eyewitnesses. I'm sorry about that. They have not released the victim names yet, as far as I'm aware. If you follow Sandy Hook, or Shady Hook, as many of us have come to call it, you will realize that the mock actors, are a big, big reason why people think that Sandy Hook is not real. The mock actors, disaster actors, crisis actors, they are a real thing. I've even seen this in schools in Minnesota. I grew up in Minnesota, and there have been high schools that will do mock drunk driving, and it is huge. It looks like a real incident. The actors portray it real. Everything is realistic, and that's kind of the signs that I see in not every eyewitness, but certain eyewitnesses, and I want to call these two my key eyewitnesses, because the most important thing about them is that they both saw the shooter and he didn't shoot them. But there are very interesting things when you go back and look at these two people's stories. We'll start with this woman, Beth Topping. First of all, both of these people, I'll just go over some things that you can look for in looking through eyewitness accounts to see if they are lying or if they are being genuine. Number one is that, I'm sorry, I just kind of click when I talk, but number one is that when someone experiences a tragedy, most of the time they will recount their experience as 25, 50, 25. This means that they will do 25% build-up before what happened, 50% description of what happened, and 25% description of what happened afterwards. If we're looking at the cases of these two people, Joe Orcutt and Beth Topping, it's not that way. Their stories look something more like 50, 25, 25, meaning their story builds up with 50% of it containing details of before what happened, very visual details, very graphic details. Oh, I flew onto the ground, and you will notice even that the news reporters will prompt them to say certain things. For instance, there was one news reporter that I saw that said, "And has this ever happened before? Is this a crime-riddled community?" And of course the answer is no, but it's not a crime-free community either. So it's just kind of, the deception with verbal cues that these even reporters can prompt out of people. So number one, that's the first thing that strikes me, is that their stories are more like stories instead of recounts of tragedies. They are 50% lead up, 25% of what happened, 25% after. I almost want to say that it's almost like 50, 15, 35, because it's kind of unreal how visual these two people speak, and how it's more like they're setting up an image for you as opposed to recounting something terrible they went through. Second of all, this is a great little breakdown of eye cues and what to look for when people are lying. Now, these are not 100% accurate by any means, because it does make a difference if you're right-handed or left-handed, and 100% of people don't do these things. So it's something to look for, but it's not something to completely rely on. This is the best breakdown I've seen of eye movement, and this is looking at the person. So looking up and to the left is a visually constructed image. This is the most common place, up and to the left and directly to the left. Visually constructed, auditory constructed. I'll put this in the link or in the description so that you guys can look at this too. But basically, these are the two directions that you're looking for. This means they're thinking of a visual image to make up, and this means that they're thinking of, something auditory. So you can just read a little bit about it and kind of get to know what all of this stuff means. But this is very helpful when watching these two interviews as well. Just watch their eyes when they're talking. Another primary thing that I want to bring up is something called duping delight. This is seen nearly every time when we find a case like Casey Anthony, where someone is so clearly guilty, O.J. Simpson, but they are not found guilty. Basically, duping delight is them taking pleasure in the lie that they're constructing. And this can be as simple as just kind of small downturns in their lips, basically kind of forcing back a smile. I watched an interview with him, and he's doing it very badly, but she is also very bad at it. You can see just the corners of her lips are just down in a fashion that's consistent with holding back a smile when you're not supposed to be. And then it can go all the way to the extremes of this, the full out crazy wide-eyed smile. And, this is what we see most commonly, is this kind of face where the edges of the mouth are downturned, and then he clearly his forehead is up, which is a sign of being uncomfortable or feeling uncomfortable, and his edges of his mouth are downturned, which is an indication that he's trying to hold back some type of smile. Duping delight is not preventable a lot of the time when people are guilty. It's subconscious. It is something that your face just kind of tells, and if you know how to pick it up, you can start to learn when people are lying pretty easily, actually. So those are the three things, actually, I would look into when you're looking through eyewitness interviews to see if they're genuine: eye direction, duping delight, and 25, 50, 25. Going back to Beth Topping, she says that she saw the shooter. I can't remember the details of it. I would need to rewatch it, but I watched so many, they kind of blurred together. But she and this man, Joe, they saw him. And out of all the students on the campus, none of the students that I could find saw him physically except when he was dead. And so here's Beth Topping saying, I saw him. And again, very visual, everything she's talking about. Here's Beth Topping's Twitter. I haven't had a chance to look through it, but I thought I'd offer it up to you guys before it gets blocked or taken down. At Toppingtown. She is a member, and they actually talk about it in this interview right here. She works for KCRW FM. She works for a radio station. So something to think about there. Look at her picture first of all, and then the fact that she works at a radio station in or near LA. That could be an indication of some type of acting experience, or at least the ability to freely lie for entertainment or other purposes. Maybe not. Again, maybe coincidence. Now here's the other man that I find to be the key witness, and if you have been following Sandy Hook, you will realize soon that this guy, I think, is going to be the Gene Rosin, because already his story seems inconsistent. I've heard him say a couple different things, just small discrepancies, but he's very vibrant, and he just seems like an actor to me. Like, he seems like the typical LA actor to me. But supposedly he works at the bursar's office. When I searched his LinkedIn, it actually said that he works in some type of law and said nothing about him ever being employed at Santa Monica College. And so the other interesting thing that I find about him, he has all the same problems, the visual cues or the verbal cues and giving the visualized stories and things like that. But one thing that I just kind of laughed at, actually, when I found it because it was so ridiculous, is this is his picture for LinkedIn. That is this man right here. And you can't tell me that this is not a headshot. I've seen many headshots before, and I've seen many professional photos before, and there's just no way to me that this is not a headshot done on purpose to be some type of headshot. Unless he got some kind of nice by the way this man presents himself. And not to stereotype actors in LA, but he does meet a lot of the criteria that many of them, behave like. This man is actually very interesting too, this man with the backpack on. He's kind of goofy, he's kind of, almost laughable at first, but then, right at the end of his little rant, he starts saying, this is because of the government. It's because the government has been watching us. The government has drones. And as he's saying this, or no, he doesn't say drones, excuse me. He says it's because the government's watching us. Everyone is afraid. And even the man with the gun is afraid. And at that point, she actually interrupts him and moves on to another subject. And he just kind of fades into the background. But this guy seems like he actually kind of maybe knows what's going on. But of course, he's made to look like a fool. Alright, let me move down my list here. I think I'm almost done. Okay, so some facts I found out about John. Again, I can't find very much at all. I've been looking for quite a while and I just can't find much. But his brother Chris was named as the shooter first. And if you, again, have been following Sandy Hook, this is a coincidence. Max Malone actually made a good comment, and he said, they're kind of a one-trick pony at this point because there's so many similarities with this shooting and that shooting. And that is a big one, is that, they said, oh, this is Chris Chris Z. And, he's the one that did it, and then all of a sudden, wait a second, it's John. same case with Ryan, except Ryan was still alive, so he could say, no, it's not me, and but yeah, same thing. It's very, very odd. The other odd thing is that both the Lanza parents and these parents were divorced, and the shootings are accredited to, in a big way, the divorce. This doesn't make sense to me, number one, because many, many children around the United States are dealing with divorce more and more frequently, which is not a good thing by any means. I mean, it's not a bad thing, it just is. But, I feel like it's becoming kind of a norm to be able to deal with things like this. And not only that, but to say that the divorce of John's parents caused this is saying that almost 10 years later, he finally decided to act out because his parents filed for divorce in the 90s. So that would mean that he was boiling crazy for 10 years and no one noticed or said anything about it. And the same thing with Adam Lanza. They say that was a big a big reason why he did what he did was their divorce, but that was 3 years before he did what he did. So realistically, how can we blame these situations for making these people do these things when they happened so long before? If they were gonna happen, they probably would have happened right when the tragedy hit them, because that's when they would have been the most emotional and irrational. Unless, they were planning for this long, but that kind of seems unrealistic too, without anybody noticing that they were doing these things. So then, last but not least, I have some pictures that I wanted to go through. So we have these pictures of the body, and Max Malone and a couple other people on his channel, I linked the video in my last one, but definitely go look at it so I can spread you that information as well. But he points out a lot of things, and so does one of the girl in his video. They say that, and it's so clear, this opposed to the boots and vest are two totally different locations, and you would have to be blind not to see it. Okay, but here's what I see that they didn't really talk about but probably noticed. In fact, I'm sure they did. But he's wearing what they said, what all eyewitnesses said, is a tactical vest, which means that he didn't get critically shot in the abdomen or chest area. If he did, there would likely be some kind of pooling underneath him or spraying behind him. There are clearly no wounds on either leg, and you can see that from multiple angles. From what I see, there are no wounds on either arm, also from multiple angles, and the head is not visible. So we're expected to think, I would assume, since he can't be shot, he wasn't shot in the chest and wasn't shot in the limbs, that he was shot in the head. Now, I don't know if you've ever seen any crime videos or crime scene videos or photos or anything, but when somebody gets shot in the head, it's not clean like this. It is everywhere. It sprays. It would be back here likely. If he was standing in this position, it would have sprayed behind him and fallen on the ground more than likely. And then not only that, but there would have been pieces of his, depending on how close they were, there would have been pieces of his gray matter or of his face or who knows behind him. Not only that, but it would have caused some type of pooling underneath him. None of that is visible from any angle. And this is something that's consistent with Sandy Hook as well. No blood in any of the photos. Another big thing that I notice is, where is the chaos? There is literally a shooter's dead body laying on the sidewalk here, and multiple people were able to just walk right next to it and take photos of it. With the sheer amount of police officers that were there, surely they could have set up some type of blockade or put a sheet over this. But that brings me to my next point. I think they did that on purpose. I think that this body is deliberately laid out like this, because if you're looking through the eyewitness videos, like I said, I looked through dozens of them, you will see that they all saw this body. Pretty much without fail, every one of them saw this body. And I'm wondering if it has to do with Adam Lanza, because there were so many questions about, well, where the hell is he? Where's his body? When no one sees him go in, no one sees him go out. Lo and behold, all of a sudden we get surveillance cameras of him going in and out, and his body is laid out, presented for everyone to see. Because realistically, crime scenes would be blocked off in numerous ways, and he probably would have a sheet or some kind of body bag or something over him, especially in a highly populated area. But I don't see anyone in this photo. There is no tape, there is no officer, there is one cone. And in a large city like Santa Monica on a college campus, this would probably be taken care of a lot better. I can't promise that, but like I said, with the sheer amount of police officers there, you would think someone would be watching it. Moving on. This is the only picture that has been released of him. Now, supposedly, he was going to be 24 yesterday. I could be wrong again, but to me, this doesn't look like a 24-year-old boy. This looks like a teenage boy. Now, this brings me to Adam Lanza. Is this going to be the same thing? Is this going to be the only picture besides the blurry surveillance pictures that we're going to find of him? Because this just in general is already bad quality. It looks like a yearbook picture. It's probably from when he was in high school, which definitely means that it was younger than he is now. So I'm very interested to see if they will release more recent pictures of him, because so far it's the same deal as Adam Lanza. This is the picture that they released of him leaving the school. There's another one of him going in, but both of them have a lot of contradictions. Again, Max Malone points out a lot of those. One of the biggest is here, and this is a very, very blurry photo. It's terrible quality. The one going inside is clear as day. This one is terrible, and I think that's also on purpose as well. But the biggest thing is that you can see he's wearing boots, and his pants are tucked into them. And if you look back at the body that we were just looking at, those are clearly black tennis shoes. So it only stands to reason that 1, this is not that man, or 2, they somehow, for some reason, switch the shoes. And Occam's razor tells me that that just means it's another man, because that would be more probable and more simple than someone switching the shoes out. Another thing I noticed, again, similar with Sandy Hook, there's so many ties, it's just unbelievable. But the lack of chaos and the lack of panic in people's faces. And I don't know if this is a common thing with police officers. I'm not by any means law enforcement trained, but you can see that many of them are not wearing helmets, but some of them are. So I'm just curious if this is normal for them to be going into what they believe is a combat zone, but still at the same time having no helmets on, because they're in the same active area as these men are, and they do not have the same type of protection. But in another photo, this man actually is wearing a helmet. So what happened, or what did they see that made him go, okay, time to lose the helmet, looks like I'm fine? To me, that says that they're not afraid. It doesn't necessarily say that, they did that because they knew nothing was happening, but it says to me that they're not afraid. Because if they were afraid, they would have their helmets on, because they would want to do everything that they could to protect themselves. So from what I'm seeing with the mix of some helmets, some not, some men are afraid, some are not. And then if you'll notice, some of the faces, you see almost signs of the duping delight. And this man here, you can see the edges of his mouth. I had it zoomed in a little bit better, but I'm not going to do that right now. You can definitely take a look at it. You'll see the same thing, I'm sure. But the edges of his mouth downturned, his face, his brow wrinkled. It's again the kind of the signs of the duping delight, that I'm lying, but I don't want you to know about it face. Here's another photo that I thought was just, wow, look at this Kodak moment. Look at this that they're putting out there for the world to see. Such a wonderful SWAT officer escorting these innocent little children away from danger and flying bullets. But no one looks concerned. And I don't know if you've ever been around kids, but you can drop something loud and they will be in a panic, in a frenzy, some of them. And so for them to be let out with this man in full SWAT gear with a huge AR-15, well, assault rifle, I'm not sure what kind of gun that is. And then, the parents back here, or the teachers, just kind of do-do-do-do-do. Nobody seems to care too much that they're being let out by this man. And like I said, especially kids, a lot of times, they will panic when they feel like something is wrong, because they have good instinct, a lot better than adults a lot of times. Moving on, here is another picture that shows a lack of panic and chaos. We have one man in the background in the same vicinity as these two, in a readied position, with a helmet on. We have these two men with their guns down, walking nonchalantly. There's actually another photo, that's how I know they were walking slowly. there's another photo of the three of them where they still have guns down and he is posed in this alert position. So this could just be tactics that I'm not aware of, but we see again, he is in a felt hat and he is not wearing a helmet. So to me, this says these men are not afraid. And this could be after the incident happened, but then why is this man in this alert position? I don't know, I could be overthinking this stuff. This is one of the most concerning things to me. This is a picture of what the gunman was supposed to be carrying. Now, the total that they came up with here was 1,300 rounds, 2 guns, full gear, meaning tactical boots, tactical vest, tactical helmet, and he did all of this in 10 minutes. So he shot his brother, his dad. He somehow managed to reload the gun multiple times. He sprayed bullets, he lit the house on fire. He sprayed bullets on the roadway. He sprayed bullets at a bus. And then he killed people in the community college. And this all happened in 10 minutes. And I'm not sure how quick and easy it is to transfer this stuff, but I would think that changing the mag that many, or the guns that many times, the ammo that many times would be very, very difficult. And I actually have watched a few videos of people shooting AR-15s on YouTube, and it does take them, even the professionals, quite a while to switch the mag out. Even if they're doing it quickly, it's usually at least, 10 seconds or so. And so, yeah, you have to factor that in, along with all the shots, along with the amount of time it took him to go from, point A to B to C. So all of this, to me, I guess, it's just very interesting, because there's another photo of the crime scene where there's just kind of blood in the middle, and it looks like all this stuff is just thrown all over the place. And it makes no sense the way it's laying, and the fact that he is not carrying this bag in any of the photos is like, well, how did he have this at any point? And how was he walking with it so easily when it's all so heavy and shooting accurately at anybody? So yeah, I mean, if you know more about guns and ammo, maybe you can explain and I can understand a little bit better of how that is possible to do that all in 10 minutes. Here we see another picture. This is actually the second in a series of 2 that I found, but I couldn't go back. I went back to find the first one and I couldn't. But this man in particular, again, we see no real signs of true panic or chaos. Could be after the fact, maybe that's why. But his face is having the same kind of duping delight to it. And this is really one of the things that prosecutors will look for when people are on trial, when people are in court, because it is a telltale sign. It's subconscious, so people are unable to control it. And then we see again just a scene where it looks like there's not too much chaos or panic happening. And you can go through picture. I could not find any where they look to be very urgent. This one is very interesting and disturbing. Like I said before, it seems as though his body has been laid out and displayed in a sense for everyone to see it, as in, yeah, look at this bad guy, he's dead right here. Very interesting and disturbing. Like I said before, it seems as though his body has been laid out and displayed in a sense for everyone to see it, as in, yeah, look at this bad guy, he's dead right here. The eeriest thing about the placement of this body is that it's directly in front of the Santa Monica College sign. If you know anything about symbolism, this is pretty strong. This is basically saying, look at this stranger, the anonymous black stranger that infiltrated this sweet community college. That's just kind of like evil infiltrating where you feel safe. And that could be overthinking. Sometimes I just overthink things, but I just thought it was very odd that so many people noticed only his body and it's directly in front of the sign. And this fact that there, again, is no tape, no blanket over him, no nothing. And this guy just seems to be having a casual conversation with the only officer in the vicinity who doesn't seem to care much that there is a dead shooter near him either. Just the whole way they dealt with this body seems very unusual and peculiar to me. And then we see here again more faces that look like duping delight. Generally when police officers are dealing with a tragedy like this, you don't see this kind of happiness, these kind of giggles. You see fear, you see panic that they're trying to hold back. You see all these emotions that are basically shock driven emotions. And in Sandy Hook and in these pictures, you see a lot of the cops just seem to be kind of relaxed and okay and doing just fine. So those are the other things that I brought up there that I wanted to bring up to the community and see if anyone had anything to offer. I know that I'm still doing a lot of research and that there's still more things I want to look into, but these are some things that I wanted to bring up and point out to you, especially the eyewitness accounts of Beth Topping and Joe Orcutt, because they look like actors to me, and if we could find out that they were, I wouldn't be surprised. So if you guys have anything to add, please let me know. I'm always open for discussion, and I'm really interested in this case. And as always, thank you guys for watching. Hello again, everybody. Hopefully my audio problem is fixed now, so I can start making more of these Santa Monica videos, because every day I seem to find quite a few things that interest me. First of all, there's actually a few corrections that I want to make to a couple of the other videos I made. The body did eventually have tape around, John's body did eventually have tape around it. So all the photos that we see where there is no tape and no blockage, apparently there was some kind of blockade around it eventually. So the pictures that we see might just be inside of those police lines. But then the question kind of begs, how did so many people get inside those lines? Unless there was an evacuation route that only could go that direction. But it was dragged from the library. The official story is that it was dragged from the library where there was blood. So there were pools of blood, though not very large, inside of the library. So that would explain the lack of blood next to the actual body outside of the school. The police were in the vicinity, of the body, just not directly next to it. So again, the pictures might just be too close that you can't see the police officers. But it was out without being covered by anything, by a body bag, by a sheet, by anything for a good amount of time. It could be minutes, it could be hours, I'm not exactly sure. There was actually no shotgun used. As of now, there is no evidence that any shotgun was used. So we're with the AR-15, which was only, a lot of people are saying, the non-active part of the gun, so just the replacement part, not the part that holds bullets. I can't remember what the two ends were called. I believe the other end was the receiver, which it was missing as far as we've seen. Maybe there was another gun that just hasn't been put out, but then, you know, it's kind of interesting because the handgun itself was they called it a relic type gun, which means that it was, they think black powder, which is very, very old. Zawari did have mental health problems and was put on a 72-hour hold due to making pipe bombs and threatening staff and students at his alternative high school. So that's another thing I was inaccurate about. I said kind of, why didn't anyone do anything if this was boiling for so long, and this is why. They did actually do something about it. The radio station that Beth Topping works at, KCRW, is a college-based station. It is not a Los Angeles-based station, it's just a college station. Though in one of her interviews, I do see that there's a reference to the newscaster kind of says, oh, you do stuff like this. So I have an inkling that she is kind of used to being on the reporter end of things. I will be doing a breakdown of her interview in Joe Orcutt's. I already kind of started looking through hers. I was just kind of waiting for more to break down her facial expressions, her eye movements, her mouth movements, her words, things like that, as well as Joe Orcutt's. And the last thing is that the lack of emotion or expression that I saw on the police officers' faces are likely deliberate and due to their training. So what I'm seeing as a lack of chaos or emotion might actually be just them shutting down in order to stay professional. Alright, so those out of the way. There are a few other corrections. You can look in my comments and I might have already noticed. Otherwise, if I didn't, let me know and I will definitely change that. Okay, so we have here in this article, these are things that I found kind of interesting, is that in more than one case I found that people in his family, Chris and Rhonda, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, I believe it's Rhonda, never spoke of John, or rarely. So in this one we see, all I can think about are Rhonda's loving ways, said fellow waitress Nicole D., 30, tears in her eyes. She's playful and funny and always singing top 40 tunes. I never saw her cry. She never talked about her kids. and that's this article here. So I found that very interesting because even if you have kids that somewhat act out, I feel like most mothers tend to idealize or romanticize their children in the way that they behave. So, I mean, that's just kind of an odd thing to me. Maybe it isn't. Maybe she just didn't like to talk about her personal life. The second odd thing that I found with that along the same lines is in this video, we see Chris Zawahiri's friend. You have to go a little bit into the video. I believe it's probably about a minute in. So once you get about a minute into that video, you will see his friend Albert Ramos talking about Chris. And he says he didn't really talk about him that much, meaning John. So now we have two people who knew the mother and his brother, and both of them saying, yeah, that's strange, we never really heard much about them. And then the last odd thing I found along these same lines, this neighbor, De La Torre, he has been all over the news and maybe another one of the key people to look for because he is just in almost every article and all over the news and in all kinds of interviews and everything. But he was a neighbor of Zawahiri, and he said that the gunman's father told him he was having problems 8 months ago. So, I mean, I found that just kind of odd, like, oh, okay, he was having problems, but that was 8 months ago? That just seems like a kind of odd fact, or maybe it just seems like it was put off for so long, or just an odd time frame. Something about it just seems off to me. So yeah, these are all the articles about that. I can link you guys to all of this. I'll just link you to this article right here. So then another really strange thing is that there have been 3 shootings in Santa Monica in 5 days. And the first, of course, is Zawahiri, the one that we're discussing in these videos. And then there was one on Sunday where a cyclist was shot. I don't know much about that case yet. I haven't looked too much into it. And then on Tuesday, 2 men were shot, what they said, at random. So basically, these men were just in an alley, and some man got out of his car and shot at them and then drove away and left 1 dead and 1 is still in the hospital. So I find this very interesting that Santa Monica is suddenly having this surge, or maybe just media coverage, extra media coverage. But also at the same time, it's very interesting that we have 2 men critically shot here, what seems to be at random. Well, I'm sorry, one of them is not critically, but pretty close. And so this seems to be at random on Tuesday, and then we have 5, 1 including the gunman, that would be 6. There were 6 victims. So yeah, we have 5 not including this gunman, so that's only 3 more people, and this was also at random, and to me it would seem like just as scary. So why is this shooting getting so much more attention than this one, when they both seem to have a little bit of the same, MO? It's just kind of at random, just kind of out of nowhere. Why did this happen? People that seem to have no motive behind it, and then it's just not nearly as publicized as the one on Friday, even though it was only 3 less people. These pictures I find very interesting. If you know about Photoshop, I would really like to hear from somebody who knows about Photoshop that can answer these questions for me. They have released 2 pictures that I've seen officially of John Zawahiri. One of them is this junior picture of him, where he seems to be 16, 17 years old, I'd say. Well, when you're a junior, yeah, so 16 or 17 years old. And then we have this one, where he's 23 years old. So, now if we look at these 2 pictures, nothing seems odd about them at first, other than, okay, yeah, this one is relatively older. Then we look at them side by side, and I'm not sure if I'm just seeing this because I want to see this, but to me, it looks like it's the exact same picture, but reversed. And I don't mean the rest of his head, obviously not his hair and things like that. But when we're looking at the face, we're looking at the eyes, and we have this round corner here, and then the same here. And yes, obviously, I know that this is, his face, so it's going to look the same, but most of the time, if you take 2 pictures, especially this many years apart, of somebody, they're going to have slight differences to them. So what I see here, anyways, is the eyes. I would really like someone who does Photoshop to do this and not me, because I'm just sort of guessing at this point, but a couple things that I see that are weird are it almost looks like this white spot here, this light spot, is exactly the same here. And then we also have this little divot here, and then a little dark spot here, and both at the same spot where the mouth upturns. So if you can tell me if this is at all the same or close to the same, or if I'm just seeing what I want to see, that would be great, because I'd love to hear some opinions on that. Next, we have Deborah Fine. If you have seen any of her interviews, Deborah Fine is just kind of, it's just theatrical is the word for it. It's just very theatrical. The first couple articles I read about her said, oh, woman fakes death. She was in a vehicle on the road when Zawari started to walk towards the bus in the community college. And so she actually swerved and blocked him from carjacking her, I believe, and then, kind of got shot at a few times and played dead. And that was the biggest thing about her story the day that it happened, was that she got shot at and she played dead, and that's how he went away. Now all of a sudden I'm looking a couple days later, Santa Monica shooting victim distracts gunman, saves woman, and they're making her out to be some kind of celebrity. And it's very interesting to me because, like I said, I watched her interviews and I read stories and articles about her the day it happened, and not one thing mentioned that she saved or helped anybody. Everything was just that she had faked dead. So this is just making the conclusion that since he had to look at her and pay attention to her to make sure she was dead, she saved the woman who he carjacked, which, I don't know, none of it makes any sense. I just think that it's silly, and that it seems like, again, it's being the imagery. It's painting you a story. It's painting a picture for you. And it's not just facts. It's just painting you this romanticized and just intricate story and vision. So one person had sent me a couple links that say that she looks very similar to this woman named Deborah Jacobson. I'll see if I can find that. But I don't believe that it is actually the same person. Here we go, Deborah Jacobson. I don't believe she's actually the same person. At a first glance, they look very, very similar. Oops, that's not it, sorry. They look very similar at first glance, but then if you look at her, she has brown eyes. And I understand that this can be something that can be changed, so maybe that could be something worth looking into. The voices do sound the same, and she has had some kind of classical vocal training, so that's interesting to know as well. But to me, they look very different. But who knows, really? You can change a lot of your appearance just with if you have enough money. So this is another laughable thing that I found. This woman had been interviewed a couple different places that I read, and she was his preschool teacher. So that means that this woman knew him roughly 19 years ago, and she's trying to say that she knows about them and their life. That year, teacher Wendy Paris encountered 4-year-old John and his mother, Rhonda Abdu. I'm sorry if I'm butchering that name, no offense intended, I just do not know how to pronounce that. In a special education program at a Santa Monica public preschool. He was very withdrawn and clingy to his mother. It was obvious to me that there was trauma in the home. Okay, I don't know anybody who is the same person when they were 4 years old than they are when they're 23 years old. That's just a big joke to me. None of that how can they even use somebody like that as being any type of even newsworthy interview? So yeah, this is more of the painting the image of him being so ostracized ever since birth, and it was just something you couldn't prevent and things like that. This I thought was really, really interesting when I read about this. This has to do with the fact when they found the pipe bomb in his house in 2006, this resource officer who worked at his school said this statement about him. I remember him specifically because he had the long hair. He had the black outfit on, the black trench coat, the black boots. He was very thin. He had just had that isolated look. Again, painting him as the isolated freak, as it were. Just watch out for that weird, creepy kid that doesn't like to be around anyone else. And look, he's been like this ever since preschool, says this woman who knows him so well. So I thought, the black trench coat, back to Columbine, that's very, very interesting. And I don't know if they're trying to purposely make the connection, or if maybe he was some kind of copycat, or Columbine copycat, where he kind of modeled himself after that. So, you know, something to think about there as well. Something else was that after he went on his psychiatric evaluation, the 72-hour hold that he got placed on when he was talking about building bombs and hurting people and things like that, was that he had this gun prohibition, so that he could not have guns in his home, or for 5 years, excuse me. So that expired in 2011, so then he was able to get guns again in 2011. I think that this is a really important thing if we are looking at the side of the government staging this for gun control. Because this is saying, look, even though we tried to stop it, we still couldn't stop it. The answer isn't in curing mentally ill people, because look, that doesn't work. He had his firearms taken away for 5 years. The cure or the remedy for this is to have no guns, because if there were no guns, then it doesn't matter how crazy he is. You know, and that's not what I believe by any means. Someone will kill you with a jump rope if they really want to, which is true, by the way. Look that up. It's crazy. But yeah, I mean, it's just ridiculous how they are trying to push this as, oh look, even though he was taken away from guns, and even though he wasn't allowed to have them and legally couldn't have them, he was legally able to have them again in 2011. So, you know, just kind of trying to show that even if we stop them in that way, they're still going to find guns and shoot us. This is another thing that I found about his actual death itself, was that he died from multiple gunshot wounds. And now if we go back to remembering the pictures of him, somebody had told me that there was an aerial photo of his body, of the scene where he's laying in front of the sign. And if anyone else can find me a link to that, that would be amazing, because my biggest thing is that if he died of multiple gunshot wounds, his head, which would be the only open place if he had that vest on, would be demolished. Unless, you know, he did get somehow shot in the chest. I don't know if that's possible to shoot through a bulletproof vest. Perhaps it is. And lastly, this is a perfect example of how the media twists things to their favor, or to the official story's favor. I'm sure you can all remember that the day this happened, and there was article after article, and there's video after video on YouTube. When this happened on the 7th, they said that this all happened in 10 minutes. And a lot of us went, whoa, wait a second, that's not possible for him to even walk that distance in 10 minutes. And now we're saying he had 1,300 rounds of ammunition, plus combat boots, and you know, pockets full of ammo, and a chest full of ammo, and a bulletproof vest, and a helmet, and the AR-15, and a handgun, and he walked and did all of this in 10 minutes. Well, no, okay, then they released a couple days later, and I saw that it said 13 minutes. Okay, that's a little more believable. Well, now they're really stretching it. So now they're saying, as of today, it was a 15-minute rampage. So that's just one perfect example of how the media will twist things, whether there are conspiracies or not. This is flat out proof that the media does twist things to get you to watch and believe what they will make money or profit off of. Or, you know, they'll just twist things to make you believe what they would like you to believe. So whether the motive for it is conspiracy based or is just corporation and money based, I'm not really sure. But it's just interesting. If you follow news articles, you will see them change over time. Like I said, I literally saw this change from 10 to 13 to 15. And you can probably go back and see that for yourself. So I think I am going to wrap it up for today. Like I said, we'll be releasing those breakdowns, kind of analyses of the Joe Orcutt and Beth Topping videos. And if you have anything to add that you would like me to add to my next video or talk about next time, I would love to hear it. Other than that, keep searching, guys. Hopefully we can find some more proof and expose this kind of stuff finally.